Hello guys, welcome to the channel. This is the story about what if Naruto was the Jinchuuriki of 9 Bijuu x Highschool DxD Part 15. Before I start the video, please subscribe the channel for more fanfiction video and please share this video with your friends. This story was written by Havoc Tear. With any more interception, let's start the video. Earth. Underworld. Lilith in the Grand Council chambers, tall, monolithic, architectural arches untouched by modern times. The teleportation circle dies down and there stood a wounded group of 5 devils. 3 officers, barely standing, an exhausted Sirzeks, and a one-armed Zekrom. Guards and council members rushed to help them, yet the Red Satan declared, "Arrest Zekrom." The room paused, silence dawned, and confusion set in. Taking a breath to try stabilize himself, Sirzeks reiterated again, "Arrest Councillor Head Bijuu immediately." After a moment, the guards complied and moved to apprehend the one-armed older devil, though Zekrom countered, "You will not win without me, Sirzeks." Sirzeks flopped down on his seat at the table's head, then breathed twice before he answered back, "Win? You misunderstand something here, Councillor." The room seemed to tense at his candid tone, the fury beneath the silky words undeniable. When Sirzeks opened his eyes again, gone were the blue-green, instead was the powerful scarlet of destruction as he ordered, "You will be offered as compensation should our efforts to achieve peace ever bear fruit." Mouths hung ajar at that. Even Ajuka looked unsettled by the silent rage of his best friend that told him how serious this was. Zekrom was unperturbed and countered smoothly, "Peace. They just wiped out 10,000. Loyal devils." Sirzeks cut him off, rage and magic swelling as he grit his teeth while glaring at the old man. He spat out, "That you did not have the authority to mobilize." Falbium jerked up at that, sitting straight and attentive as he demanded, What happened?" Eyes flowed between the Red Satan, the 3 wounded officers, and Zekrom before Sirzeks informed the council. In response to Zekrom's not-so-subtle demand of requiring Sage Miyuki to be surrendered to our care, Sage Narian decided to make a statement. Leaning forward on his throne-like chair, eyes still a very dangerous scarlet, Sirzeks hissed, and used the unauthorized security detachment Zekrom had brought along to send it. "But your safety was already assured," Sirzeks growled, glaring at the foolish councilman who had interjected unnecessarily. When the fool cowered, he added through clenched teeth, "Now, we are seen as unnecessarily rigid and dangerous. Trust, gone. Bartering power, non-existent." He takes a breath to try calm his nerves. He was leaking killing intent at unproductive levels. After a moment, he sighed. Sirzeks continued, "We have been made examples of." His gaze swept the chamber slowly, meaningfully before he pressed, "In front of the whole supernatural world. 4 sages. 9 Dai Yukai. 1 Emperor-class dragon. That is what wiped out our detachment." Swallows were had, but Falbium inquired further, "Which Emperor dragon?" "Diedrich." Sirzeks revealed, causing a sudden, sharp intake of air from every devil present. He added, "I am unsure what Sage Narian did, or what power he has, but the Red Dragon Emperor has a physical body again. That is most concerning. But not unmanageable," Zekrom insisted, drawing attention to himself. Sirzeks' sharp glare cut to him, and his voice dropped low, dangerously grave. "As for you, Zekrom." His power raised and the air grew heavy. Several guards suddenly realized they should probably be breathing, but the oxygen was tainted with fury and just seemed unsafe. Zekrom did not cower or lower his head, despite the shackles he was now sporting. "Effective immediately, your titles and station are no longer yours," Sirzeks decreed. As expected, there were several who wanted to object, but a look from Falbium silenced those treasonous thoughts as they formed. "You cannot do," Zekrom began, but Sirzeks pushed off his seat with a surprising amount of elegance as he interrupted. "You do not dictate terms to me. Due to your actions, the greed of you and your conspiring partners, Our faction has been placed in grave danger. Hands behind his back, even in torn garments, or because of them. Every non-Satan devil suddenly felt small as the Lucifer seathold approached the former head of council. Know this, Zekrom. Sirzek stated like a verdict made. I too am a man of my word. So, as I told you previously, if they call for your head, do not expect us to protect it. His smile was damning, unapologetic but certain. So, prepare yourself. For I will trade your life, should they demand it. You, take him away. Sirzek ordered as he turned his back on the former council leader, then added briskly. Falbium. Please ensure he finds suitable accommodation. Without delay, Falbium raised to his feet and the guards, suddenly increasingly motivated for some reason, pulled on Zekrom's shackles and pulling the man forward. He wouldn't yell, scream, or plead for his release. No, there are other ways out of this. As he was being led away, Ajuka asked carefully, then, where do we stand, Sirzek? Sirzek took a moment to think as he reached his throne again, hand running along the arm rest then up to the back as he gazed out the window. After considerations, he informed. For now, we must adapt. Adapt? Sirzek nodded, then explained. I want a full revision to the laws as they pertain to the evil peace system. Wait, what? As that will take time. Sirzek spoke over the stupid noble, not slowing down as he continued. We shall make certain overtures to buy us that time. You have them in mind then? Ajuka questioned, leaning back in his own seat on the elevated platform where the four Satan's thrones sat. Sirzek by the window continued. By the order of this council, the four Satans, Menma, the rogue Rook, Maelstrom and Black Cat Kuroka the Stray, are to have their criminal records expunged effective immediately. The Nibirius council man jumped to his feet, slamming his fist on the table and bellowed. That woman killed my. But he fell silent with a sideways glance from Sirzek, his eyes still a molten red as he asked calmly, is that a problem? Wisely, the man sat down. He had survival instincts after all, and they appeared to be functioning correctly. Done. Ajuka commented, fist supporting his head as he leans on the arm rest. Not yet. Sirzek continued, still looking out over Lilith from this vantage point of the council chamber. He added. For you, Ajuka, you need to finish looking into the removal process of evil pieces. Sharp intakes council-wide, but Ajuka just nodded, figured that would come up as he offered back casually. Yeah, working on it. What else? I want eyes on every single old Satan faction member we know of. Sirzek commented flatly, almost monotonous. Upon hearing his friend's hum, he elaborated. By now, Kateria Leviathan has relayed our defeat to their headquarters. No doubt, in the coming weeks, they will try to sow further discourse. Pretty much. Ajuka commented, lazily flickering the air and staring off into space. They will sabotage the powerful. Sirzek began, getting an unseen by him nod from his green-haired friend. He listed. Whisper into the ears of the disenfranchised. Make promises to the lowest rung of our society. Incite the restless, stir the restful, and claim nothing. You have a plan then, right? Rias Gremory asked from his seat at the long table, one of a few who had yet to move since the return of his son. Even now, he was looking into his wineglass, watching the fine red swirl around the edges. We must stabilize first. Sirzek informed calmly, unbothered almost. Then he added, damage control next, then we regroup and revise. Soft murmurs finally begin to break out across the various parts of the council. Clearing his throat, Lord Cetri inquired carefully. Then, may we ask what of Lady Leviathan, surely, in terms of damage control? Sirzek began but paused. Biting his lip almost enough to draw blood, before he let out a subtle, short and silent breath, then informed. Seraphal Leviathan is being held as collateral. Gasps from the room as a whole with the Lord Cetri being the loudest, falling back into his seat dumbfounded. Ajuka's eyes hardened, then whispered dangerously. Collateral. Then, I take it this was the sage's doing? It was. Sears X confirmed. A breath later he finished. Although we were fighting separate opponents, I spotted her fall, caught, then evacuated by Sage Natsuo. Her current location is unknown. This is unacceptable, but we will bear it, Sears X declared, finally turning back to the council fully, his face showing that this was no time for games. Not the time to question his authority as a Satan of the New Devil faction. Backs were straightened, attitudes left aside and focus locked. Sears X stressed. We are no longer the de facto government of the biblical factions. We cannot take on the Sage faction directly, or even indirectly. A few raised brows, a few tight frowns, and plenty of neutral looks. They have set the tone the rest of us must now follow, Sears X explained, arms still behind his back and face sharp as any blade. His eyes shift from face to face swiftly, before he added, and now we have been set below zero. Finally, he relaxes his tense shoulders before he finished, but we are not yet beaten. We must change. Not if. Not but. We will change. Failure is not in our vocabulary. Am I understood? Undisclosed location. In a location none dared look stood a safe house within a cliff somewhere no one had any interest in noticing. Within this small building, barely a shed but safe from observers, Valley Lucifer, the White Dragon Emperor, had just finished his warm-down stretches when a magic circle appeared just outside. He recognized the signatures, they were just on time, so he grabbed a t-shirt and threw on some trousers before he stepped out to see what they wanted. Surely enough, two people stepped out. The first a bespectacled young man, much like himself, with blonde hair and a single strand across his face, in his usual business suit. Arthur Pendragon. Beside him was a girl with a slim body, shoulder-length blonde hair, blue eyes, in a sorcerer's dress, blue hat and black bow. LaFay Pendragon, Arthur's younger sister. Nodding to them both, arms folding, Valley asked, "What's the news?" "It seems you were right," Arthur began, getting a silver brow raised from his fellow. Thus he elaborated. "Diedrich is free from his gear." Valley nodded but remained quiet. LaFay added quickly, "Well, that's not all." Again, the grandson of Lucifer nodded, so she too elaborated. He, had a full body this time. Flying and fire-breathing and stuff. Abruptly, Albion materialized as wings on Valley's back before he spoke. That should not be possible. Like mine, his was destroyed. Which makes this all the more interesting, Arthur stated, getting rapid, excitable nods from his little sister. Not to mention the Dai Yukai he fought beside were just as powerful, according to initial estimates. Valley hummed, then asked, "How trustworthy is this intel?" "The New Devil faction is moving on it," Arthur explained, before he added, "Not just them either. Allegedly, the East and West Yukai factions are at the negotiating table." Negotiations? For what? No one's talking as of yet, Arthur admitted, pushing up his glasses. Seeing his friend grow contemplative, he added, "But with the news that the Welsh dragon has returned, our plans have also changed." "How so?" "Our northern campaign is being accelerated," Arthur informed, getting both brow arches from his friend. He explained, "If the red dragon has indeed returned, we need to prepare counters, quickly." A pause, before he mentioned, "Although it's still unconfirmed, but allegedly Cao Cao is also dead." "What?" Valley asked, genuinely surprised. Arthur nodded, then added, "After we spoke with him, he apparently took a group to infiltrate that mountain shrine near Kyoto. No one has heard from him since." "Heracles? Georg?" "Nothing," LaFay reported sadly, getting Valley to ponder it for a moment. Adjusting his strap, drawing eyes to the new sword Excalibur ruler on his hip, Arthur informed, "Which is why we need to get the northern push over with. Once we have Fenrir." "Fine." Valley cut him off, turning his back as his gear faded away. "Give me a moment." He paused at the door, then asked, "It was that sage, right? Who killed Cao Cao?" "We think so," LaFay answered, knowing her brother is still very bitter about his defeat and loss of their family heirloom to a stranger. Nodding, Valley finished. Then, after we recruit Fenrir and recover Bijuu, we'll look for. Actually, Arthur cut in, knowing where his head was going. We may have a plan in the works. It involves Kyoto, which likely means he'll be there too. Valley finished, nodding before heading back inside to get dressed properly. His accomplices didn't see the battle grin he wore. Albion felt it though and said nothing this time. Sage's clearing. Neutral Shrine an hour later, with the excitement of Naruto's party trick over, food was served for the gathering, courtesy of the Western Yukai faction, obviously, though the Kano Yukai were among those helping out. Artemis and several of her hunters, Magashi, Kuroka, and Xenovia were around a small fire pit, talking with Matabi and Chome about hunting and forestry skills. Kaneko was hanging around nearby, but definitely was not listening in. Son Goku and Gyuki had been drawn into a discussion regarding materials, solid and liquids, with Azazel, Benamune, and Kateria. It looked more like a research institute than a shared meal with casual conversation. Oh, Shukaku was just waved over. Things just moved into the hypothetical. Ever since she helped repair the burnt-out eye of the few humans present, Xenovia and Jordan, Gabriel had been following Saiken around discussing various pawns and medical compounds, trying to write down everything she could form the medical professional of Team Sage, as the angel calls them. The Six Tails, however, was more concerned with keeping a close watch on Naruto's caloric intake and chakra level at present, than talking to the angel and kept looking over to him distracted answering minor questions. Hitomi and Sei were talking discreetly off to the side. Both vixens were eyeing up the duo of Naruto and Kurama as they chowed down. The newest gossip among the kitsune of Kyoto at present was who was the strongest nine tails, with the secondary discussion regarding whether or not Naruto counts. At present, it is overwhelmingly a yes. Yasaka had been overhearing the gossip too, along with Indra, Shiva, and Tsukuyomi, the four having been discussing travel rights between their various followers previously, and how they foresee cooperation moving forward. Rias, Asia, Kiba, Issei, and Akeno were at a table with Graphia nearby, watching everything unfold and talking quietly. Though, the former Dragon Gear holder was watching Diedrich, Sasanu, and Indra have an arm wrestling contest with several Yukai and Isobu, all chuckling and laughing at the good time. Amaterasu was sitting at the same table as Naruto and Kurama, ensuring he was not swarmed by certain individuals. Michael too was present, explaining where Caliburn to the still kitsune Naruto, who was nodding every so often. Jordan was hanging around nearby, claiming to be a guard, but just listening to their leader of heaven discuss things with the heroic sage regarding the noble holy weapon of kings long past. Naruto was sad beside Kurama, both chowing down on various meats presented while listening to the angel leader of heaven talk. Honestly though, the blonde was only half listening as he was starving. Not that he wasn't interested in his sword, it's just his chakra was low and that took precedence in his mind. Though abruptly, both male kitsune, in unison, grew an eyebrow twitch as they glanced to a seemingly random shadow on the side of the shrine. Sariel, Sarasvati, and now Amaterasu noticed, all suspecting that something was beyond their perception that both were reacting to. Demeter, however, did not and was in a completely different gear as she finally approached the table the blonde sage was at, sliding into the open seat. The Shinto sun goddess raised a brow at the boldness. Naruto and Kurama only gave her a brief glance, and Michael paused just before he got onto the Battle of Hastings. With a smile, Demeter pulled a lock of her golden hair behind her ear before she began. Sage Narian, what is your plan, moving forward, now that your freedom of travel has been secured? Swallowing the perfectly grilled beef Naruto had used to think, he finally replied. Travel. Now that I have some idea as to what's happening and not being hunted down, I can take my time and actually look around. Demeter nodded gracefully. Amaterasu watched her like a hawk, but Michael offered. Do you have anywhere specific in mind? Kurama snorted. He never has anything specific in mind. Naruto snipped, glaring at the fuzzy-butted asshole. He finished. Don't you have someone else to torment? Not at present. Kirima reported, grinning with mirth. Naruto glowered, but Demeter cut in. Hand resting on his arm and got him to flinch away from. One hand reaching for his thigh kunai holder on reflex. Pulling back, only slightly, Demeter removed her hand but maintained her smile. Ah, sorry, I did not mean to startle you. Naruto kept his eyes on her for a moment, before nodding once and returning to his food. Meanwhile, Amaterasu had a very tight expression. Michael had a small, understanding smile. Unfortunately for the Greek goddess of agriculture, every Bijuu had sensed the subtle spike of Naruto's chakra upon contact. Thus, they were all staring at her with narrowed eyes with a clear message: do not touch. The tense situation was diffused when Kakuo came back from his run and drew eyes to him as he slowed to a walk, then asked, "What's going on?" Perfect timing. Yuki called, getting the Five Tails' attention. "Get over here. We have a theory I think you'd enjoy." Shukaku snorted. As if. He's full of hot air. Please do not act so pretentious, Shukaku. Shomei warned from his own circle of discussion. Kurama snorted, then quipped. Think you got your wording mixed up. Shomei paused, then turned back to his huddle to explain the various firefly species he has come across and their communities he has enjoyed interacting with. Normal chatter resumed, for a bit longer before Demeter tried a different approach and offered. Forgive my earlier transgressions, Narian, but I have been asked to represent my pantheon in these talks and wish to earn trust between us. Naruto hummed, but nothing more as he reached for his water glass. My brother, Zeus, King of Olympus, wishes to open dialogue with you. Demeter began to explain, getting Kurama's attention this time. He countered. Yet, he sends others to talk for him. Demeter explained to, who she believes to be, the older Kitsune. It was believed that through our shared understanding of nature, my niece Artemis and I would be a better choice for first contact. Naruto gave Amaterasu a peek, the sun goddess nodded her confirmation, and he rolled his eyes before placing his cup down. Kurama, though, was more direct. Was that before, or after, we kicked her butt back in that forest? Naruto nearly chalked on nothing, trying to not laugh at his friend's blunt approach. This is why he has no friends, he mused. With a smile, Demeter offered calmly. It was after, I admit. We lacked information on what was affecting our nature spirits before that confrontation happened. That was fair, thus Michael spoke up. I was unaware that the surge was felt from as far away as Europe. Truly remarkable. Demeter nodded, but Amaterasu offered, almost casually while looking into her freshly prepared tea. Before I forget, please remind that lightbulb that I do not appreciate his hijacking in my territory. I will not be so merciful next time. Kurama chuckled, assuming there was some cosmic rules been flexed right now, as Demeter's smile had a hint of nervousness to it as the sun goddess sipped her tea like nothing mattered. So, what? Naruto began, placing down his chopsticks and looking to the blonde goddess. You guys want me to drop by or something? Nodding, Demeter offered calmly. That is one thing we would like to offer, yes. I am sure my brother would welcome you with open arms and grant you bread and board. Amaterasu's eyes narrowed. Zeus is not one known for his hospitality, nor generosity outside his own, and even that is rare, so there's likely a catch. Oh, there is definitely a catch. Kurama voiced immediately. Nothing is free, Blondie. What's the catch? Demeter's gaze shifted to the older Kitsune briefly, before she offered. He is the god of law and order. If you bring balance, then he will be more than happy to have you in his realm. That dodged the question. Naruto pointed out, to which Kurama nodded, then added. Starting to sound like one of those old people, dancing around a problem. I am not old. Demeter countered sharply, though it just caused Kurama to smirk harder. He found a button to push. She, however, casually played with one of her curly golden locks as she added calmly. I, however, wish to directly offer you my aid. Naruto's raised brow traveled around the table, Kurama, then Michael to Amaterasu, and the recently arrived Saiken last. Smiling like a spring day, Demeter offered. Not right now, but hopefully in the future. If you ever need a helping hand, please feel free to call upon my domain. You will find, in your travels, that very few care much for nature, and so, should you require it, I shall offer you my help in your time of need. Before Naruto could finish processing it, Amaterasu cut in sharp as his swords. That is indeed premature, Greek goddess. Eyes land on the epitome of seriousness from the leader of the Shinto pantheon, her gaze cutting. Before Demeter could counter, she was spoken to. The sage is under Shinto protection. We permitted your attendance as a representative. However, we will not tolerate your attempt of recruitment of a champion within our domain. Naruto and Kurama could only infer the scope of this champion by the seriousness on display, but also decided to keep watch as several others of these gods snapped their attention over to this discussion. Calmly, Demeter raised her hands in surrender. Forgive me, Lady Amaterasu, but I only offered aid upon his journey. So he can find sanctuary, even beyond your realm. Nothing more. Do not take me for a fool, Lady Demeter. Amaterasu responded, not letting up her hard stare. It is no secret how your pantheon selects its heroes and their fates. Do not. Abruptly she paused. Naruto and Kurama perked up simultaneously. Then all three glanced to the torii gate in front of the shrine in unison, before slowly standing up with their gazes locked. Whispering broke out. Yasaka approached the trio, Sei and Hitomi following, but abruptly Sariel stepped beside the three, also staring at the celestial Shinto gate. The Angel of Death spoke first. This is a surprise. I was curious as to why he hadn't shown before now. He had business elsewhere. Amaterasu replied dismissively, just as a soft glow overtook the torii gate. Then the feeling of absolute, soul-crushing cold swept over the clearing and had the mortals shivering at the inevitability. Naruto was fine, though. Eventually, out stepped a ghostly figure, slowly materializing into something less translucent, gray robes tattered yet presentable as they turned to see the clearing. The smile was dastardly, truly menacing without trying to, and revealed needle-sharp teeth. Respectfully, Naruto bowed his head. Lord Shinigami, what brings you here? With a gravelly chuckle, the Shinigami replied, You do, boyo. I bring news of my will. The Bijuu began to gather up behind Naruto, who nods and prepared to listen. Every group present had fallen silent and were paying rapt attention, after all. It isn't every day death speaks, or every century it seeks someone living out specifically. Just before the Shinigami spoke again, its eyes flicked briefly to the same shadow as Naruto and Kurama did, but ignored it and gave its verdict. You are aware of the end. Blinking, Naruto nodded, recalling that conversation with his family. The Shinigami continued. The time is nigh, but I decree the innocent be saved. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, his voice tight. But, your deathly grace, how do you? Everyone was surprised at the respectful, formal response from someone who seemed rather free-spirited. The Shinigami raised a hand, causing the blonde to fall silent, before it spoke. As we converse, my messenger has gathered the loyal. The scattered light, your scattered light. Naruto's breath caught, but the death god did not stop. Thy messenger will deliver them to my sanctuary within lands of fire, and via my will, a bridge shall be created. Gesturing to the torii gate behind it, the Shinigami reported. The task I beseech to you, boyo, is to stand unbending. For this task requires your brief return to the land of the end and gather your lost light to recover it to this domain. Tears gathered in the corner of Naruto's eyes, as he understood what was being asked of him, but he forbade them falling as the blues shimmer orange as he reported, as if already written. It will be done. Smirking, the Shinigami pressed. In 6 hours, my messenger shall be ready, the path illuminated, and your task to be undertaken. The calamity shall not wait. The sins of the betrayers have cast the final stone, for the Luna's descent is inevitable. Many shared looks. This sounds like an apocalypse prediction, but none present seemed to understand it. Well, those outside the Shinto, Bijuu, and the sage. I understand. Naruto stated firmly. The Shinigami nodded once, then added. You were their prophesied hero, Boyo. Their salvation. Breathes caught, especially from the angels present, all staring at Naruto differently now, none more so than Sariel. When they turned their vileness upon thee, demanded your submission on one hand, asking for mercy in the other, the Shinigami continued, with genuine disgust to whom he was referring to, surprising most. The death god continued. They were doomed by their own fear. That is their greatest, final folly. I never meant to, Naruto began, but Kurama cut him off. The death god is right, brat. They let their fear guide their actions. Even those who claimed they had no choice stood by and watched it unfold are not innocent here. Placing a hand on his shoulder, drawing Naruto's gaze, Yuki informed him. Trust in us this time, little brother. Just as we have in you. Drawing in a long breath, then slowly exhaling it, Naruto nods once, before looking back at the Shinigami and informed. Thank you, Lord Shinigami. Nodding once, definitively, the death god added. As the designated savior, the choice lays in your hand alone. Your light is waiting. His smirk was dark, mysterious as he finished. I trust, like your kin, that you will gather it all. Punching his open palm, grin feral, Naruto reported. I never go back on my word or break a promise. That has always been, always shall, and has never changed from being my Nindo. Nodding once more, the Shinigami turned back to the Torii gate then informed. 6 hours, Nidame's sage of 6 paths. Time is not your ally here. Naruto nods while the death god returned to his domain to prepare for this once-in-a-lifetime event. After a few moments, the sage finally took a long inhale, then took his time to release his breath and allowed his body to relax with the motion. Then, he turned back, facing the crowd he was suddenly aware of, but he left that aside for now and looked to his family. The Bijuu all nodded. Dietrich too nods once, so Naruto instructed. Okay. New mission. We gotta get prepped. Kurama offered. How's your chakra levels? Before that, Saiken began, all eyes looking to her. As she informed. You need rest. Your regeneration will speed up if you. It's fine. Naruto replied, though the fact his 9 sweeping tales remained told a different story to the Bijuu. He insisted. But, I'll talk with the others. I'm sure Miyuki will want to help, same with Natsuo. Aoi. Will kill me if I don't even ask, but I doubt she'll help directly. Probably not. Yuki confirmed with a nod. Dietrich added. But this means we get to run wild again, right? Sounds like fun. Depends on how many people we are rescuing. Saiken reminded, getting nods from the rest of the huddle of the Bijuu and Sage. Matabi offered. That's true. Though, the list is pretty much in the air for numbers. Considering how long we've been away. Biting his lip, Naruto nodded. That's true. It's been months. A lot could have happened. Not could. Kurama cut in, arms folded, red eyes fierce. A lot has. And now, we're expected to face it. Let us not forget. Yuki began, drawing attention. If what we know is true, there is no doubt going to be resistance. We will be facing an all-out war. Silence drawn as that fact was digested. After nearly a minute of contemplation, Naruto exhaled slow. You're right, Yuki. They'll throw everything they have at us. Yuki nodded, but Chomei interjected. We no longer have the ability to withdraw this time. It will be worse. Let them come. Son Goku grunted, grin firm. We won't fall. Now you're talking. Dietrich announced, getting a nod from the humanoid 4-tailed ape. This sounds like a lot of destruction and creative use of overwhelming firepower. He chuckled, flexing his briefly clawed hand that rippled with green magic. Is it my birthday? Clearing her throat, Yasaka drew attention beyond the huddle of Bijuu, Dragon, and Sage, who all blinked owlishly as she interrupted calmly. If I may be so bold, I feel that we are a little out of the loop. You said something about a rescue mission and a falling moon? Everyone nodded, beside the Shinto, who were wondering why the Shinigami let this happen and how thoughtless Narian and his group had been to discuss this in the open. The Bijuu all looked back to Naruto, who then looked to Amaterasu and asked, Everyone else followed his gaze to the leader of the Shinto pantheon, who thought on it for a moment and nodded, once. Amaterasu informed. You have my permission to disclose this information, seeing as the Shinigami already spoke this much. The eyes returned to the sage, who remained contemplative, while Saiken stepped up with her hand landing on his arm before she added. You once wanted to be a leader. If what Lord Shinigami said is accurate, you already became one without realizing. Naruto nodded, so she smiled light as she added. Now, in less than 6 hours, a group of your people are coming here. They will be tired, exhausted, maybe even injured, and they will need food and shelter. She's right. Yuki chimed in, drawing attention to his very serious expression. He offered sternly. From what was said, our situation has drastically changed. We will need more than just our wits and strength. Information controls will be shot too. Chomei chimed in, somewhat flatly. The point is. Kurama cut in with a grunt, then finished. It's time to stop hiding. This is when Matabi appeared on the opposite side of Naruto to Saiken, sneaking one of her tails to intertwine with his as she spoke. We have friends here now. We can trust them, right? Letting out a sigh, Naruto quipped. It's not that I don't trust them, it's just I don't know who's coming. He paused as one of his tails tightened on Matabi's as he whispered, Who survived? Snorting, Shukaku bellowed. My brat is too murderous to die. His sister too. Those Nadeshiko Kunoichi too. Isobu offered softly, yet those memories hit Naruto like a truck, having completely forgotten about them. He really hoped that Shizuka isn't still hung up on him. Just then an ice mirror appeared and out flew Izuna and Haku, ready for the worst, but upon seeing everyone gathered, they stood down as she asked. We sensed something dangerous. Lord Shinigami showed up. Naruto offered, causing both to freeze briefly. Izuna muttered. Did you summon him, Uzumaki? Snorting, Naruto quipped. Not this time, no, gasps from the crowd, before he added. But he did give me a mission. Izuna raised a brow. Oh, what did your god ask of you this time? Rescue mission. Naruto explained, getting a confused look from the Uchiha and that caused the blonde to sigh hard. Turning back to the gathering, revealing to Haku that Matabi's tails was wrapped around one of his and irritating her unknowingly, he decided to get this over with. Addressing the crowd, Naruto revealed somewhat hesitantly. Okay, so, as some of you may have at least have inclination of. He looked to Sarasvati, Indra, then Azazel and Sariel, before he finished. Matim and I were not born here, on this world. Silence. Total silence so engulfing, that the keen of hearing could pick up the distant Kyoto traffic. Surprisingly, it was the squeal of Rias who broke it, but she slammed her hands over her mouth when she realized she had. Sarasvati just nodded. It was as she had been beginning to theorize and wasn't quite shocked as others, clearly. Letting a long grunt, Azazel commented. That makes a lot more sense, actually. The sage's power levels are. Actually. Izuna cut in, drawing eyes to himself. He pointed at Naruto and elaborated. He's the only one. Miyuki and I only have memories of that world as we were both reborn into this world as sages. Blinking, Azazel looked befuddled. Wait, you were reborn? Like, reincarnation without evil pieces. Haku and Izuna both nod, he explained. I'm over a century old. I arrived only a decade ago. Haku added, though her eyes hadn't left the black flame-patterned azure cattail wrapped around the long golden-furred foxtail. We don't know why, or how, just that we were both reborn here. Izuna revealed with a shrug. He added, but my wife was also born here and not like us. This is something we must look into. Indra commented seriously, arms folded across his chest and looking to Shiva then Sarasvati, both of whom nod. This is incredible. Michael whispered to himself, deep in thought. Gabriel nodded then smiled as she cried out. You must have been delicate souls to be granted a second chance. Naruto and Kurama snorted in unison, and Izuna rounded on them both with a glare. The Bijuu quipped, hardly. You, me, one-on-one. Izuna stated, his Sharingan spinning up. Kurama chuckled menacingly, with pleasure. Not the time. Naruto cut in, though honestly his money was on Kurama. Not just for their joint feelings regarding the Uchiha clan, but also the fact that after Madara, they have found all Uchiha since, somewhat wanting. The important thing is this. Naruto continued, drawing all attention to him again. That world, my original world, is about to end due to its moon falling from the sky. Tsukuyomi and Artemis jerked at that. The Greek goddess inquired. That should not be possible. Why is that world's moon? There isn't one. Shomei cut off, drawing attention to him. He informed. The only gods there, of importance, are the primordial goddess and the Shinigami. Blinking, Indra asked. Are those all? When he received nods from the sage and his team, he inquired further. Then this primordial. Sealed away. Naruto cut off, before shifting focus despite it being clear there were a ton of questions. He stated. Not important. What is of importance are my people coming here. It could be as low as 1, but as much as 1,000. Putting her shock aside for now, Yasaka stepped up immediately. We will welcome your people with open arms. Nurarihyun added immediately. The Kanto Yukai will provide what support we can. These are basically interdimensional refugees. Azazel murmured to himself, which basically hit Gabriel like a lightning bolt, as that was easy to understand. Thus she declared. We will help. Michael nodded immediately. I shall begin making arrangements immediately. Word is already being sent back to Kyoto. Yasaka informed sharply, Hitomi already running off, likely to spread word. Amaterasu cut in. Naturally, they will be under Shinto protection. Fear not, Narian, they will be safe under my light in Yamato. My hunters and I will ensure this shrine has adequate protection. Artemis informed, and her maidens all nod firmly, bows in hand and resolve in their eyes. A brief flash of concern from Naruto, wondering how they'd handle the Nadeshiko situation, and honestly, he wasn't looking forward to meeting their princess, or queen, maybe, again. Still, Naruto smiled at them all and nodded, when Azazel added, oh, yeah, we'll help too. He paused, then looked to Narian directly and asked far more seriously, you said you're going to be fighting that entire world, care to explain further? Everyone recalled that earlier, leaning in closer to listen as Indra added, what kind of opposition will you be facing? Naruto shared looks with the Bijuu, though Dietrich chuckled and reported, from what I am aware of, it would be difficult even for you to handle, rain. Perhaps some additional firepower. It isn't that simple. Naruto cut him off, not unkindly but far more concerned than anything. Izuna spoke immediately. You know I'm coming, right? No debate about this. As am I, Haku added, steel in her voice, tone as cold as the Arctic waste she awoke in as she glared at the smirking Matabi, who stuck her tongue out at her. Abruptly, Kuroka appeared at her fellow cat's side, smile knowing, as she declared. You're not leaving me behind either, Nya. Begone, cat. Kurama dismissed Kuroka with a wave, then added, this is not a game. Hands on hip, Kuroka snapped back. I am a quick study, Nya. I can handle some humans with fancy chakra, Nya. Every Yukai recoiled at that. Chakra has always been their domain, now they find out there's a whole world where the humans have chakra. Is that true, Narian? Yasaka asked, stepping forward. With a nod, Naruto reported. Yes. My world only has chakra. No magic whatsoever. Azazel stepped forward, intrigued beyond measure and taking notes. A non-magic evolutionary path. In humans no less. Fascinating. The Bijuu all share a look, Naruto too, but none decided to interpret the fallen angel's assumptions. A discussion on their chakra's origin is a whole different story that they won't be able to cover here, no time. None missed their sharing of looks and suspected that the governor was misinterpreting things, including the governor himself, thus they all put that aside for later. Mental notes were made, bookmarks tallied. Clearing his throat, Yuki reported. At our last estimate, the force we will likely be around 43,000 or so, with the minimum power of Ugurli. He points to the hunter lieutenant, Zoe Nightshade, who perked up as he added, boosted by chakra atop that. There was a moment of silence before Son Goku inquired, did you take into account the damage we did? Blinking, Yuki hummed as he scratched his chin in thought, think so. What about the minor villages we blew up? Shukaku bellowed, cackling in the memory of them, hands up and swaying in celebration of the destruction. Many sweat dropped at that. Diedrich chuckled. Ah, you told me about those. Wish I was there. They deserved it. Matabi hissed, her ears flat against her hair recalling the events herself. Isobu whispered, it was terrible, but it was necessary. What about that time we dropped a mountain on Iwagakure? Kakuo offered thoughtfully, causing Son Goku to grin sharply, chuckling deeply as he thumped his chest with a fist. That was totally worth it. Giggling, Shukaku added in a sing-song. Double tap with the Bijuu Dama. Kurama snorted, then quipped. They pulled back after that. Still think we should have hit the others, for good measure. Estimated casualties were, what? Yuki muttered, thinking hard. Naruto supplied. Of the Iwagakure strike? About a third, so around. They should be down to about 6,500, or so, Yuki answered, to which the others nod. Everyone else was speechless at the casual number drop. Using the lead hunter as a benchmark, these forces are not weak by any stretch of the imagination in the slightest. Chomei then delivered. So, about 40,000 or so for the alliance forces left. Sounds reasonable. Yuki confirmed with a nod, then sighed. Then, how many exactly are fieldable? Good question. Kurama responded, before he grinned and added, not that it matters. Diedrich chortled. Indeed, they are no match for us. Kurama gives him a smug nod. Naruto was growing increasingly aware of the bromance developing between the Kyuubi and Dragon Emperor. It was concerning. Mr. Sage. A childish cry drew eyes up to see Kuno, of all people, being carried down by Ravel Phoenix, the young deviless with her blonde hair in twin-tailed drills, and her somewhat large flaming wings. Naruto blinked owlishly as the young kitsune was released as the devil let her go and rushed him, her golden eyes sparkling. The seriousness evaporated as soon as the young Kyuubi stopped before the kitsune form Sage. Kuno was in awe at first, then immediately started inspecting Mr. Sage intently, eyes squinted as she circled him and staring up then down, stopping at the swaying tails. She very visibly counted all 9 of the, compared to hers and her mother's, long swishing tails. She ignored the cattails constricted around one entirely, before returning to the front and gestured to bend down. Befuddled, Naruto did so and she stared at the fox ears poking out of his golden hair, going so far as to poke one and watch it flicker and inspected the reaction carefully. Eventually, Kuno's golden eyes landed on Naruto's blues then nodded approvingly. Mr. Sage is best like this. You are proper now. Naruto's sweat dropped. Kurama burst out laughing, and Yusaka face-palmed to hide both her flushed face and smile at the ridiculousness of her daughter. Everyone else chuckled, smiled, or smirked at the young girl's proclamation. Though, Kuno's gaze snapped to Kurama, after his laughter caught her attention and her eyes narrowed slightly and in full seriousness. Yet, unlike with Naruto, she didn't inspect him as closely, just sniffed him once before backing up to take Mr. Sage's hand and declared, "You're old." Naruto burst out laughing. Shukaku, Matabi, and Kuroka too. Yuki, Chomei, and Isobu looked away, hiding their smirks or smiles behind their hands. Son Goku, Saiken, and Kakuo chuckled. Kurama looked perplexed for a few moments, then chuckled with a grin, then nodded. Interesting, kid. There's hope for you yet. Stepping closer and slightly behind Naruto, as if a shield from the weird man, Kuno whispered. You're not Mr. Sage, so I don't trust you. More chuckles as Kurama sighed at the words. He basically gifted Naruto this form. Why is he the bad guy? Meanwhile, Revel approached Rias and asked. What happened? I sensed some of the fighting, the summoning of those massive beasts, but not everything. What's with that crater? Nodding, Rias informed. Lord Bijuu, he challenged the sages, then tried to withdraw. The sages denied it and destroyed our army of 10,000 with no trouble. Revel looked back to the gathering, specifically the sage by the name of Narian, and began. Then, he really is that powerful. Snorting, Ichiei reported. Powerful? Overpowered more like. Revel regarded the former Red Dragon Emperor briefly, before Rias added excitedly. He's also from another world. The Phoenix snapped to her, mouth ajar. The others nodded. Revel asked. As in, not underworld or... No, Grafia cut in, drawing the young lady's attention as she informed. A completely separate world that seems to be unreachable by normal means. Then, if he's kept it secret until now, Revel began, before Akeno informed. The Shinigami arrived and let it slip. Shuddering, Revel muttered. So, that is what we felt. Most likely. Rias confirmed, then added. Though, from what has been said, that world is about to end. Surprised, Revel pressed. How so? Its moon is going to crash into it, apparently. Rias informed casually, like this wasn't a world-ending event. Revel needed a moment to process this all, hand on forehead as she thought about it all, and whispered. This is insane. The peerage all nodded, though Akeno noticed the gossiping kitsune around the edge of the clearing, the ones who had been delivering food for everyone constantly. They were all watching the interaction between Kuno, Narian, and Kurama. Noticing this, Kaneko explained. They're talking of the 4 Kyuubi. Akeno nodded, suspecting that, but for Rias, Revel, and Grafia it reminded them that the Yukai now has 4 Kyuubi. Double than just yesterday. Yes, Kuno, the princess of Kyoto, is still a child, but now she possibly has access to 2 elite trainers, one of which is a presumed level 5 sage, and the other a Dai Yukai of untold power. We should help. Rias whispered, her peerage snapping to her, Revel blinking owlishly, Grafia turning slowly. The redhead nodded, then looked up at Revel and stared. This is a rescue mission. No matter how you look at it, helping could only benefit us. Show that we can help and not just threaten or destroy. I must object. Grafia began, but Rias countered immediately. I know I'm in no condition to fight, Grafia, but our reputation is in ruins right now. We need to do this. She met the older Devilis's gaze without flinching, with pure determination and a conviction that will later open doors some would rather not admit to being instrumental in the recovery of the new Devil faction. Revel spoke suddenly. I shall contact my father immediately. Drawing eyes to her as she began conjuring a magic circle of viewing, blue eyes focused. As you say, Lady Gremory, we cannot allow this chance to slip by. Revel, Rias whispered, smile growing. Very well, Rias. Grafia cut in stoically. When both heiresses looked to her stern, implacable postured visage, she added firmly. But be warned. I have been informed that Lady Seraphol has been, and is being currently, detained by the sages. Should they attempt to capture you too, I cannot guarantee your safety. Seraphol was captured, Rias gasped, wide eyes in disbelief along with all the devils with them. They all slowly looked back to the sages, calmly discussing things with the gathered gods and representatives like nothing was wrong, which somehow made it worse. They captured a Satan, alive, and treating it as another day in the week. Having made a decision, Naruto held Kunu's hand slightly tighter, causing her to look up to him, in wonder, but he instead began to walk, eyes locked forward. Matabi untied her tail and stayed behind, The other Bijuu stepped aside as he pressed on, child in hand. This was his decision, after all. The soft murmurs died down as he suddenly approached Yasaka, who had watched him curiously as he got to her. Standing before her, the sage remained silent, but clearly deciding on something. Mind made up, Naruto offered his empty right hand for a handshake, confusing everyone, including Yasaka, before he broke into a smile. Sorry for the late introduction. The Kyoto Kyuubi's breath caught, realizing what that might mean. What this means, and she wasn't alone in this realization, meaning everyone was paying full and total attention. Seeing as everyone will know soon enough from others, Naruto began, somewhat hesitantly, a soft chuckle, before he finished. As the first to welcome me, properly, I want to tell you personally. Smiling herself, Yasaka nodded and took his hand, allowing him to introduce himself. It's great to meet you, Lady Yasaka. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, clan head of the Uzumaki clan, the last Uzumaki, and the Nidaime sage of 6 paths. Nodding and accepting this reintroduction with the grace she was known for, Yasaka responded formally. Then, Lord Naruto Uzumaki, of clan Uzumaki, allow me to welcome you to Kyoto, and Earth as a whole. On behalf of the United Ukai faction, we thank you for your service and faith in us. Clapping from the gathering, polite, formal, but light. As the hands dropped, Kuno perked up as she spotted something on his hand still and asked, Mr. Sage, what's that on her hand? Naruto looked to the young girl holding his left hand, surprised she caught his sun mark, but as he was keeping that to himself for now, he smiled and offered. Another time, Kuno. She didn't object, just nodded once, unaware of the mark of the moon she was currently touching, that faded with the pulling back of 6-path chakra. He didn't need it to speed up his chakra regeneration anymore, so Naruto pulled it back and returned to solely his own Uzumaki chakra. Kuno. Yasaka called, drawing her daughter's attention. Mr. Sage has a name. Please address Lord Uzumaki with. Please, just Naruto. Naruto cut in, not unkindly, somewhat bashful and unaccustomed to such formality. Even back home, he hated that stuff and the years on the run only reinforced it. He's been betrayed by ladies, set up by lords, and killed daimyo. He is no lord. A certain actress turned daimyo, the sands of Windy Nation, and the frozen peaks of mountaintops come to mind in sequence. The soft tone of the deliverance, the loaded undertone told others more than they needed to know, and even Kuno didn't question it. Very well, Naruto-sama. Yasaka offered gently, and as much as he wanted to protest, he didn't. Would be petty. Abruptly, Saiken appeared at his side and ordered. You need to rest. We have less than 5 hours and 40 minutes for you to recover your stamina and chakra. Naruto went to argue, but her silver-eyed glare paired with hands on hip and 6 tails twitching, effectively silenced him. This seemingly gave the youngest Kyuubi present permission to tug the hand she was holding, Kuno chirped. Come, Naruto Oji, there's food over there. As Naruto was pulled away by the youngest Kyuubi, talk about his name was already spreading and the de facto leader sage community was spreading. A sage from another world. A hero betrayed by those he saved, who was going back because of a promise. Ruined devil forward command. Crater. The heat haze still persists over the blackened, glassed crater even as the ground still sizzled, trembled, and groaned as it cooled slowly. Beyond the destruction of Ground Zero, the trees and canopy were blown back with few standing while others barely cling via their roots and were splintered by the flash heat wave. Not a single surface left unmarred by heat, ash, or burns. Not a single living thing was around. At first. Standing near the lip of the crater now stood Kateria Leviathan, tall, tan-skinned, bespectacled woman with a voluptuous body and long brown hair tied into a bun. Her purple eyes scanned the damage. The absence was the first thing she noticed. She had passed through the mist that hung around the edge. Steam from the waterlogged ground created a barrier almost, and beyond it, the silence was eerily clear. Then the forest stopped, charred, raw ground took its place, and when she finally reached the edge, The ground just stopped. One attack. Kateria muttered to herself softly. It did not even feel like the air wanted to accept the sound her words made as they died swiftly. There were no birds nearby, no insects, not even a wind to hear her. Even as a devil, this felt wrong. Retrieving a glass orb from her pocket dimension, she lifted it as her magic flowed into it and created a record of this erasure of forest, earth, and life. To bear witness to the ashen stone, vitrification of soil, and a irregular-edged crater from a single attack from the new Dai-Yukai. Kateria, honestly, if only to herself, did not know who she was recording this for. Herself as a reminder of the allies, partners, perhaps as a better word, she is now in the presence of. Or for her fellows in the old Satan faction. A warning or an opportunity, maybe even an opportunity against the fakers. She did not know, but this felt required. She scanned the area once again. There was supposedly a new faction command post here. She hadn't sensed it. An army of 10,000 soldiers, she hadn't seen it. They did. The soldiers, eradicated. The base, erased. One attack. Just one from the giant Dai-Yukai, and this was the result. Yes, the Red Dragon Emperor had aided it with a secondary attack, but that was more for containment. Her senses had gone haywire during the buildup of that large kitsune. Gravity warped. Light did not fare better, and the pressure was. Shuddering just recalling it, Kateria noticed the subtle change in the glow and the completion of her recording, thus lowered the orb from above her head to just before her chest. As she stared at the now opaque orb, no larger than a tennis ball, she now grasps in both hands while recalling the time she has spent alongside the sage. He may be a human, and she now uses that term very loosely in regard to Naruto, right? His true name is Naruto Uzumaki, last of his clan. Pausing on that thought, Kateria now reviews his acceptance of her request differently. It was not opportunistic as she originally thought, but perhaps a shared desire for family, to find what was left and recover it. Human or devil, everyone understands the pain of losing family. Purple eyes hardened, snapping around. Kateria felt the eyes in the shadows and her magic raised up sharply in preparation for an attack. The tension spiked slowly, gradually, almost inevitably. Then she noticed what had her on edge. The shadows themselves. The ones of the forest boundary were darker than night, unnaturally so. Only one being comes to mind in regards to darkness, and even one as proudful as Kateria knew she was out of her depth here, not that she showed it. The shadow of a lone, bent-over tree, closer than the tree line, that rippled lightly as it expanded, eventually stepped out a fairly well-endowed-looking teen with long, striping black hair above a cute childish face, pointy ears and a smile the devil would recognize anywhere. A sadistic smile buried beneath a cheery facade. The shadows seemed to make up her frilly, one-piece sundress, as her hands fall behind her back as she stayed at a distance for some reason. Kateria broke the silence, respectfully before this entity. Lady Nyx. What brings one of your persuasion to this area, if I may be so bold? Giggling, Nyx smiled wider than chirped. No need to be so on edge, Bat-chan. Kateria did not lower her guard, not for a moment. After all, if I were to kill you, Nyx continued, then spun around as if frolicking in a field of flowers. My objective would be far, far harder to achieve. Objective. Now, little Bat-chan. Nyx began, chuckling lowly as her black eyes finally landed on the old Satan faction Devilis. With just a look, the baby bat went rigid as a prey before a predator. Smiling receding a little, she asked, almost politely. I must ask, but, who do you serve, exactly? Kateria was now certain a single wrong breath would result in something not going right for her. That question was loaded with no right answer. Sweat ran down the back of her neck. Abruptly, Nyx giggled as she swayed side to side, then glanced back to the tree line. Ah, seems this is goodbye for now. Looking back to the devil, she offered a daintily innocent wave. Until next time, Bat-chan. Just as she disappeared into the tree's shadow, Nyx's voice whispered, not a word. Kateria remained silent and motionless for a short time, before eventually from the reeked tree line stepped out a teenager-looking man, wearing rimless glasses, short straight lime green hair, 6'1" and looking unimpressed with arms crossed. As he pressed his glasses up his nose, Chome questioned, "We noticed your absence, Lady Leviathan. Care to share your discovery?" That seemed to ground the Satan-class devil, breaking her from a minor trance and allowing Kateria to look to the teenage-looking Dai Yukai. Specifically, one of the ones responsible for this devastating event. Clearing her throat, she nodded once then explained, "I was just curious, and taking notes, for research purposes." She vaguely waved towards nothing in particular, in the general direction of the world behind her, but clearly distracted beyond just that, Chome noted. He obviously suspected that flicker of presence that had been bothering Kurama and Naruto, and he thought he had sensed over here was gone. Mentioning it to them later, in private, would be reasonable. Nodding slowly, Chome offered, "Then, if you are done here, perhaps returning to the clearing is wise. We have a plan to implement and your participation has yet to be confirmed or clarified." Stepping away from the edge of the wound in the earth, Kateria headed towards the Dai Yukai and began. "You mean," he asked for my inclusion? Watching her intently, Chome replied surgically, "My little brother suspects you will pivot to gain an advantage, yes." Impressed, but not showing it, Kateria reached the man and stated, "It seems he is rather understanding, if not accommodating of my nature." Turning his back to her, he reported, "Differing views is not a crime. Your actions, however, have been judged as tolerable, until that changes." He trailed off, the rest need not be spoken. Nodding, Kateria inquired, "And you, Dai Yukai, what is your stance?" Without turning back, Chome stepped away and eventually replied, "That was not the subject of discussion, Lady Leviathan. Elemental Nations. Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. The village hidden among the leaves has long been considered the strongest hidden shinobi village, among even the Great Five Nations, and has spawned numerous legendary shinobi since its founding at the start of the current shinobi era. Located in the Land of Fire, founded by the now completely defunct clans of Senju and Uchiha, Konohagakure stands as a beacon of cooperation and teamwork, fostering peace and prosperity between its former antagonistic rivals, becoming the unspoken center of the Shinobi Alliance. It was almost ubiquitous with the largest and most powerful alliance in the Elemental Nations' history. It's rather sickening, if you ask the red-headed Kunoichi currently standing unseen on a tree branch and overlooking the village. The pre-dawn sky is still dark, for now. Kushina has been waiting for this moment. Well, not this one exactly, but rather in less than 4 hours, she'll be able to hold her baby boy again. He's all grown up now, has good morals, eats well, yes, that includes the food of the gods, because Uzumaki know how great. Back on subject. Shelving those thoughts for now, the Uzumaki matriarch looks over the seemingly peaceful scene of a snoozing village. It was a clever deception. Kushina has already noticed the additional patrols. The mixed Anbu, Bolt, Gem, and Hunters. She blinked. Oh right, her son depleted their numbers pretty heavily during the time they hunted him. Her amethyst eyes darkened to cold glass shards at that thought. They hunted her boy, perhaps destroying them. No, focus Kushina. Seems they've already gathered. Kushina whispered, eyes scanning the very discreet increase in numbers. With an expression void of anything remotely resembling emotion, she stared blankly at the task ahead of her before she took a breath and focused. Glancing to her arm, a complex seal matrix on the lower portion briefly illuminated against her pale skin to confirm her signature was completely erased from external sensing, and that meant that the little traitor had no idea she was here, yet. Looking back to the village, Kushina then murmured, "If my husband and son can do it, so can I." Holding a bird hand sign, she locked onto her target before she suddenly vanished in a red flash and her infiltration of the Shinobi Alliance's Konohagakure no Sato had begun. Land of Fire. Konohagakure no Sato. Ow. Kushina muttered, stabbing her toe against a box after successfully pulling off her, now, family jutsu of Hiroshin. Hopping once, before leaning back against another stack of boxes, she inspects her open-toe sandals and cursed softly that this one weakness popped up. It was short-lived, as she began to look around at the dark, dusty storage house and wondered where she was. Yes, she knew her family home was destroyed along with most of Konoha during the pain attack, but this isn't the Hokage vault she expected. Approaching the small window, she peeked out and saw that she was in a compound but couldn't identify which one. Didn't matter either way, as she turned back to the boxes, or more accurately, that one she stubbed her toe on and kneeled down to pull the lid off. With a soft smile, the kunoichi pulled out the familiar white striped, teal scarf from the box and memories flowed back to her, back when she was alive and stuck at home. She knitted this in hopes the child she was growing would wear it one day. I'm glad this survived. Then another thought hit her, that took away her soft smile. Why did no one give it to him? The physical symbol of her love for him. Taking a breath, Kushina puts that line of thoughts aside as it was a moot point as now, she can do it herself. These people are getting their just desserts anyway. No point wasting energy on it. The framed photo within the box caught her eye next, beneath her and her husband's shinobi ids, and a bunch of three-pronged kunai. Pushing them all aside, she took the only family portrait, of sorts, with Minato hugging her and her expanded stomach in the kitchen of their home with the greatest of care. They had so much hope, so much excitement in starting a family. The one thing they both desperately wanted to see growing up. One thing they themselves were denied. Kushina briefly lost perception of time staring at that picture. Only after water drops landing on it, broke her from the trance of what could have been, and drew attention to the fact. She was mourning her stolen life. Sniffling, clearing her throat, and wiping her face, Kushina promptly pulled out sealing scrolls and carefully sealed away everything that she knew belonged to her Sochi. To her family. She searched every box. Every cupboard. Every shelf. Every closet. Everything and anything even remotely connected, related to her or her blondes was collected and sealed. During this, Kushina had pieced together where she was exactly within Konohagakure. A Sarutobi clan storehouse. That was not a comforting revelation in the slightest. In fact, it made her even more pissed off, as that likely meant the old fossil Hiruzen made a deliberate choice to keep her baby from his rightful belongings. Be thankful for me being here, Hiruzen, Kushina murmured, sealing away another box into her scroll. As she finished with the last one, she finished darkly. Or I'd show you the depth of my rage at your gross error of judgment in crossing me. Dusting off her hands, then rolling up the scroll, Kushina returned to her feet and slipped the storage scroll back into her pouch, then turned to the exit. Unfortunately, said exit abruptly opened from the outside and there stood a teen. Gray and black zip-up jacket, dark gray trousers with bandages around his arms, a staff in his right hand. He didn't look happy. Kushina looked this boy up, then down, unimpressed, likely a new chunin at best. She's a jonin at worst, so she looked away from him and began focusing on the next marker to investigate. Yet the boy raised his weapon and ordered, "Who are you and tell me what you are doing here?" "Oh, nothing," Kushina replied flippantly, moving her hands into the bird hand sign and locking on to the next target. She had to sidestep a staff thrust. The boy hissed, "You aren't going anywhere, lady." The boy was interrupted when a fist met his stomach, vacating the air from his lungs as it felt like getting hit by a truck. Strength left him as he slipped off Kushina's fist, barely conscious. She stared down at him, impassively, and stated, "You are 1,000 years too young to think you can take me on, boy." Turning around, Kushina again started preparing her chakra and raised a ram, snake, then held onto the bird hand sign, only for her foot to be grabbed by the boy. Glancing back at him with nothing but cold indifference, she heard him gasp out, "Not letting you." With barely a thought or effort, she heel kicked him into the wall, definitely cracking a few ribs with it, and finally he fell limp, barely able to breathe. "Kid, as I said, 1,000 years too early to challenge me." Kushina quipped, finally locking on to the next beacon. Just before she activated Hiroshina again, she added, "Learn to give up when you're outmatched, not that it matters now." Then she was gone with a red flash of light, leaving the boy gasping, but defiant. Senju compound appearing in a dusty room filled with scrolls that likely haven't seen the light of day in decades. Kushina could barely see anything after her flash died down. With a click of her finger, a small steady flame appeared on her finger and revealed the vast library of the Senju clan. Jackpot. Lighting one of the torches on the wall, then dismissing her own, Kushina recovered a bunch of sealing scrolls from the various pouches on her Uzushio Jonin vest and smirked. By blood ties, these shall be returned to the family and will survive the ending of this legacy. She hadn't even made it past the second row of the first of 4 racks, when Kushina sensed a presence approaching, fast. Standing then turning back to the door, she pulled a kunai and when the door parted, she held still as she suspected she knew this woman. Not personally, but by reputation and word of mouth. A fair-skinned, slender build of a woman with onyx eyes and straight, jet-black hair with bangs that cover her ears and frame her face. She was the picturesque of modest with both her looks and clothing choice of a long bluish-black kimono with white trimmings and obi. After a few tense moments, the woman looked confused, as if trying to place her, so Kushina asked, "Are you here to stop me?" Snapping out of her confusion, the woman took up a familiar stance and stated, "I cannot allow you to pilfer my lady's family archives, so." "Wait a second." Kushina raised a hand to stop her, blinking at the stance and knowing only one Senju who used it. Placing hands on hip, a slight smirk, she inquired, "I don't suppose you're Shizune Kato by any chance?" Shizune blinked owlishly, relaxing her stance slightly, but not much and nodded, then posed her own inquiry. "Yes I am, but I do not know you. Care to?" "Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze." Kushina informed with a nod, grin still in place, and that left Shizune perfectly confused. It lasted a moment, before the medic retook her stance, eyes sharp as that was clearly impossible and this woman was a lousy impersonator picking a dead woman to infiltrate. Hands up in surrender, Kushina explained. "Yeah, I know. I'm dead, right? Well, technically speaking, I still am." "Edo Tensei then." Shizune concluded swiftly, making sense of this situation quickly, but Kushina waved that off and tried again. "Not something so barbaric." "Barbaric, it is very much so, a very crude and barbaric thing, that impure world resurrection." Kushina confirmed, however pushed forward. "However, that isn't why I am back. Rather, I have permission to be here." "That does not make any, of course it doesn't." Kushina confirmed with a nod, then added, "Though, I heard about you from my cousin Tsunade." That got a flinch from the medic. Her late master is a wound that may never close. But it actually did make her angry. Shizune hissed with narrowed eyes. "Who are you and what are you?" "Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze." Kushina repeated calmly, then added, "Back temporarily to help save my son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze." Again, Shizune was caught off guard by the second name drop, but she did not waver as her hands began to glow with the medical scalpel. How dare this woman disrespect not just her master, but her beloved little brother wrongly accused of being a threat. She's going to dissect this thing and find out who dares threaten her family. Just before the medical kunoichi lunge, Kushina quickly pulled out her chains to show and added quickly, not wanting to fight an ally. "Look, see. I'm a real Uzumaki. Please. I don't want to fight." Shizune did regard the chains briefly, then muttered dangerously, "Fine, let's say I believe you. Why have you come?" Nodding, Kushina quickly replied, "You know the whole moon falling thing, right?" Upon Shizune's nod, she added, "The world is going to end because Naruto was supposed to stop it with a girl named Hinata." The medic's eyes widened at the news. Shizune whispered, "Naruto-kun was supposed to." "Yeah." Kushina nodded, proud that her Sochi was capable of such a feat despite it not coming to fruition. Then she explained, But, because of everything that's happened, he can't. He went missing. Shizune reported, and the redhead nodded before she broke into a smirk. Kushina revealed. Not missing, exactly. Shizune's raised eyebrow reminded the Uzumaki of a certain Senju, so Kushina informed. Misplaced. He's alive and kicking butt still. You could see the relief and worry lift from the medic as she finally broke her fighting stance. Shizune whispered breathlessly and filled with joy. Thank the sage. I was so worried someone caught him. Oh, he's been caught all right. Kushina murmured, snickering at the situation her son finds himself in constantly. She hasn't been briefed completely, or recently, but from what has been shared, he literally has goddesses pinning for him. Oh, the grand babies will be grand. Shizune frowned tightly at the suspicious expression on the redhead. Her big sister sense was going crazy in response, and she did not like it. Not one bit. Sensing the disapproval of the medic, Kushina came back to the room and cleared her throat, then added, semi-seriously. Anyway, I'm here to gather a few things for him before we leave to meet with him elsewhere. Black brows shot into the hairline. Shizune asked. You know where he is? No one in the Alliance has been able to. Not even Karen. Amethyst eyes going dark and cold at the name of that troublesome little girl, Kushina muttered lowly. That traitor could never. Shizune realized that this might actually be the genuine article from that reaction alone. She too has a very negative opinion of that particular kunoichi for her hand in her little brother's torment. After a tense silence, Kushina cleared her throat and informed. Long story short, in less than 4 hours' time, my Sochi will be coming back for a bit. Blinking for a moment, then that registers and Shizune's eyes widen, her breath pitched high as she uttered, hand reaching her lips. No, if he comes back then. Relax, I'm sure he knows. Kushina cut in, waving off the clearly panicking woman, before she clarified. He's coming to save his precious people. It's his Nindo, right? Eyes glistening, Shizune nodded once and so the Uzumaki continued. That is where I come in. I've gathered them in his place. Brought them together and prepared them for the moment he steps back into this world. Then what? Then we leave with him. Kushina explained simply, a soft smile as she asked. So, Shizune Kato, care to join us? Jonan Apartments. John and Yugo Uzuki stepped back into her apartment after another pointless patrol around the village outskirts. Honestly, why they called her back to active service like this if they're just going to have the entire Shinobi Alliance here is beyond her. She quit for a reason. The will of fire is dead. She whispered in a monotone as she reached her kitchen, pulling open her fridge and seeing only the bare essentials. She frowned. Then again, she isn't even all that hungry, so that's fine. Closing the appliance, she turned around to head out to eat when a familiar red head sat on her sofa in the living room she passed and hadn't noticed. Purple eyes widened briefly, before narrowing dangerously and reaching for her blade on her back. You picked the wrong form to take. You've gotten rusty, Yugo-chan. Kushina remarked, smirk fully loaded with smug satisfaction that was hard to fake for anyone not Uzumaki. She saw the hesitation in her one-time student's grip, thus placed the tea down and added. Honestly, what happened to you since I last saw you? How did you get in here? Not important. Kushina waved that off, before she leaned forward on her knees cupping her cheeks with both hands. Gentle amethyst stare into hardened purple for a time. Eventually, the return-to-life mother questioned, you want to talk about it? Not particularly. Not even a little. No, then you don't want to hear how he's doing? Kushina questioned and Yugo's stiffening was nearly unnoticeable and brief. Most would have missed it. Smile soft, the redhead offered. He's alive, Yugo. My son is alive and well, I promise you that. The former Anbu captain did not react to that as much as the Uzumaki thought she would, all things considered. Well, she's an elite kunoichi, so perhaps it's to be expected. Thus, Kushina continued softly. If anything, he's thriving and has finally stopped running, and found somewhere to call home. After a tense freezing of time, eventually Yugo asked softly. Assuming you are who you portray yourself to be, how would you know such things? Amusement danced across Kushina's lips before she explained. Clan secret, I'm afraid. I can't tell you that. Growing somewhat more convinced that this is actually the real deal, Yugo remained immovable and hand loosely gripping her sword handle. Unless of course, you marry my amazing Sochi. Kushina chirped then grinned, causing the now technically older Kunoichi to nearly trip over nothing at the thought. Giggling at the ability to trip over something without moving, Kushina added. Oh, so you're single still, huh? That's a surprise. Such a beautiful woman. Stop it, Kushina-sama. Yugo pleaded, now perfectly convinced that this was who she was portraying to be. Only Kushina could propose something so ludicrous and actually mean it. Oh, but your blush tells me there's a chance. Kushina chirped again, causing the trained and experienced Anbu captain to glare murder at this idiot teacher of hers. Having had her fun, Kushina switched gears to the actual reason she was here, and her serious tone told of this. Okay, my awesome Sochi aside, there is a good reason for my presence here. After a breath, Yugo folded her arms and nodded, so the Uzumaki explained. I heard that you resigned from the Anbu in protest of your orders to hunt my Sochi. Made into a pariah because of it. The will of fire died when they turned against Lady Fifth. Yugo stated firmly, completely serious and not at all concerned about the ramifications of her wording. Everyone knew this about her already. Nodding, Kushina explained. Right? That. Well, do you want to get out of here? Yugo raised a brow, then asked. Out of here? As in? This world's about to end, Yugo-chan. Kushina explained, and the former captain nodded, knowing this like most shinobi of sufficient rank. So the redhead finally stood and added. However, there's a way off-world. I'm offering you a way out of this rotten hive of worms and snakes. If you want it. When do we leave? Yugo asked, no hesitation or loyalty left to this regime she has served faithfully for most her life. Approaching a small table, the lower half of an Anbu mask laid atop it depicting the mouth of a kitsune, Kushina informed. Less than 4 hours. Don't touch that. Yugo cut her off, watching her guest's hand hovering over the mask she once gave to her one-time subordinate. It's all she had left of him. Smiling softly, Kushina pulled back her hand and turned to face the former Anbu captain, then finished. Be ready by then. This is a one-time thing. Miss it and you die with the rest of the world. Nodding, Yugo informed. I'll be there, she blinked, then asked. Where exactly is this happening? Kushina just smiled brighter. Ichiraku Ramen, home above the store. Appearing in the storage room of her favorite restaurant, Kushina picked up the 3-pronged kunai that still hung from a rope on the wall and was glad they kept it here after so long. Made things easier. Making her way to the stairs, she idly noticed that the front was locked down tight and realized that likely, most the civilian sector was probably the same. Not that it mattered. Climbing the stairs with the stealth one would expect of any shinobi, Kushina makes her way into the family home that sat atop the workshop of the gods, to find the man she was looking for. An older gentleman now, calmly sitting at a table, tea in hand, and calmly reading a book of some kind. Not wanting to spook him, she knocked on the door she was standing in and he turned around and gasped. Smiling, Kushina offered gently, It's been a while, Tuchi. With a slack jaw, Tuchi Ichiraku tried to make sense of the impossible, and it wasn't enough. Thus, she added. Yes, it is me, Kushina. No, you're not hallucinating. Yes, I did die. No, I'm not here to haunt you or anything. Yes. I am here for a reason. No, I can't tell you how. And finally, yes, Naruto is fine. The name drop seemed to summon the man's daughter. Ayame appeared from one of the rooms, brown hair disheveled and likely just awoken or something. She stared at the woman, vaguely recalling her, who looks kinda like Naruto a bit. Smiling again, Kushina chirped. Baby Ayame. Look at you, all grown up now. That managed to break through to Tuchi, who jumped to his feet and pointed. Kushina, Wait. Okay. What's happening right now? It seems all his questions were answered and only just recognized and caught up in the same instant. Amused, Kushina offered. Oh, just came by to see if you wanted to meet my son again. Nothing too dramatic. He's alive? Ayame pressed, hope swelling in her eyes. Kushina nodded, smirking as she explained. Oh, very much so. He got lost there for a while, but he found a place to call home. Tucci smiled, wiping his face with a cloth as he whispered. Thank goodness. He had us worried sick. Yeah, I'm glad. Ayame began then stopped, then blinked as things caught up again. She asked dubiously. Wait, you want us to meet your... She blinked again, things clicking into place as she squeaked. You're Naruto's mother? Grinning, Kushina nodded smugly. Yep. The one and only, in the flesh and chakra. She posed with hands on hips, pride rolling off her in waves, and managed to get a light laugh from Tucci, who informed. He is a great kid, Kushina. You and Minato would have been proud. We are proud. Kushina cut in, not harshly but radiating maternal pride too thick to be contained. Her son literally punched the mother of chakra in the face. A clean slug to the cheek. There isn't enough pride in the world to match Kushina right then. Chuckling fondly, Tucci offered. I'm glad, but you came for a reason. Coming back to the room, Kushina nodded and got serious before she spoke. Right, yes. Long story short, we are leaving. We? Ayame questioned, so the Uzumaki princess explained. All Naruto's closest friends. I've been gathering them all and soon, we'll be leaving to go to where he is. Tucci gasped. Ayame covered her mouth with her eyes wide and glistening. He's coming back for a bit. Kushina informed, then added. In a few hours, a portal will be opened, and it will lead to the place Naruto is right now. It's safe and far away from the moon that is currently falling from the sky. Where is this place? Tucci asked carefully, getting a soft smile from the redhead who leans against the doorway with arms folded. Kushina informed calmly. It's in a different world. One far more advanced than this one. My Sochi has been there since the whole Uchiha going nuts and trying to rule the world thing. She paused then amended. The most recent one, Makoto's boy. Tucci nodded, knowing who she meant. Thus Kushina continued. He's done well. Made a home. People he can rely on. Now, we have a place to go. So, you want to come? Of course. Ayame declared without hesitation, excited at seeing her little brother again. Tucci just sighed. His daughter was not thinking this through and thus turned to his former best customer and asked, what is the catch? There isn't one. Kushina replied smoothly, a smile on her face as she regarded him, then raised a hand to stop him and explained. You looked after my baby boy when I couldn't, Tucci. When many others turned away, you offered him a warm meal and warmer atmosphere. For that, you have my eternal thanks. She actually bowed to the man. A civilian. A single father who went out of his way to feed a lonely, starving child the rest of the village forewent and overlooked, purposely. A hand on her shoulder forced her up to see the middle-aged man smile at her, Tucci stated calmly. He was just a child, who was dealt a heavy responsibility. It was the least I could do for him, and out of our friendship to you. Kushina abruptly stepped forward and hugged him tightly, nearly squeezing him to death for a good 30 seconds before releasing him. With a smile to hide the tears, she spoke. Then, thank you again, for looking out for my Sochi. Tucci nodded, before Ayame popped her head back out of her room and asked. Quick question. How long do we have to pack? Eastern Forest. Isolated residence on the edge of the village, among the larch, red birch, and spruce trees forest there was a 2-story cabin. It was isolated, purposely kept apart from the main village for reasons that no longer meant anything more due to one certain blonde. Approaching this building was a redhead, unnoticed by most, and as Kushina stepped up to the decking and just before she knocked, it parted. A young woman, standing at a mere 5'2", Straight long brown hair that reached past her waist with a loose braid keeping it tidy and orange butterfly clips keeping it away from her face and lighter brown eyes. She was wearing a familiar-looking, but baggy on her open orange and black jacket. Her chainmail was visible, black trousers and covered sandals. She did not look incredibly impressed when she asked flatly, "What do you want? Come to take me to this damn event or whatever?" Blinking, Kushina shook her head and spoke carefully. Yugo sent me." The girl raised an eyebrow, then folded her arms, then posed. "Is that supposed to mean something?" Nodding hesitantly, Kushina spoke carefully. "Well, she said you'd at least listen to me first before giving me lip." The woman frowned, then gestured slightly to go on before refolding her arm in. With an eyebrow twitch of the rudeness, Kushina ground out, "Are you Yakumo Kurama?" "Depends on who's asking." Annoyed, Kushina had half a mind to just leave and forget this disrespectful child, but took a breath and explained tightly. "I don't know, just the mother of Naruto." That got a raised eyebrow from Yakumo, then a very obvious look up then down her entire form before she snorted. "Yeah right. If that's all." She went to turn round when Kushina grabbed her arm and pressed. "Yes. Really? Yugo can vouch for me, but she's busy gathering a few loose pieces for me." Yanking her arm out of this redhead's grip unrepentantly, Yakumo turned to her fully and stated, "Assuming that is true, then you should be dead." "I got better." "Bullshit." "Of course it is." Kushina stated flatly, and seeing the irritation on this cheeky brat's face made it worth it. With a smirk, folding her own arms, she added, "How I'm alive again doesn't matter right now." "That is a lie and you know it." "No, really, it isn't." Kushina pressed and the girl remained incredulous, but the Uzumaki continued anyway. "I know you're a close friend of my Sochi." "Close? He hasn't visited he's been on the run." Kushina interrupted her sharply, eyes narrowed and really not liking this woman. "Sheesh, slow down a moment." "No, she was never this hot-headed and she was nicknamed for it." After a breath, she quipped, "You know that and he hasn't sent me any messages recently." Yakumo admitted and the redhead nodded. Kushina explained. "Long story short, he got thrown into another world and has been busy." The former heiress of the Kurama clan looked with total apathy at this woman's supposed explanation for her best friend's supposed absence from her life. Kushina continued anyway. "Listen, I came all the way out here to give you a heads up." Snorting, Yakumo quipped, "Let me guess, you have a way to magically make him appear or some bullshit like that?" "Listen, I don't buy snake oil. Just shut up and listen to me before bitching." Kushina stressed, her hair splitting in 9 parts and floating. This rude girl is pissing her off and getting on her final nerves. Yakumo wisely chose to stay silent at the sight. "Oh okay. Naruto told her about this once. His mother had a temper so legendary that her hair would react. Seems legit." After a moment, Kushina's hair settled and she took a few deep breaths before finally, she explained curtly. "In a few hours' time, a portal between this world and another will open. My Sochi will come through and help get any of his people out. As one of them, I wanted to let you know he's coming." Yakumo nodded but remained silent. Kushina then added, "So, if you want to come too, get packing and meet me at the old Uzumaki temple as soon as you're ready, got it?" Yakumo nodded but remained silent. Kushina nodded, glad to have this understanding. As she turned around, she paused then looked back at the jacket and asked, "By the way, that jacket, it's my Sochi's, right?" Yakumo nodded but remained silent. Kushina's eyebrow twitched, realizing what this girl was doing and snapped back, "Answer me." "He left it here a while ago." Yakumo confirmed, gripping the 2 long sleeves with her fingers, and the Uzumaki nodded. It was obvious thanks to the Uzu swirl on the upper arms. Kushina then stated, "That's fine then. Remember, 3 hours. Yakumo began and the mother stopped, glancing back over her shoulders at the troublesome girl. The brown-haired woman asked, "Theoretically, let's say I don't actually know where this temple is. It was at that moment that Kushina had realized she had assumed everyone was already aware of it and just told them to meet there without giving any information on its location. Nara compound leaning against the support pillar of the house. Shikamaru sat with a knee up, arm resting on it with an unlit cigarette cradled between his fingers and the lighter in his other hand on his lap. His gaze was on the moon and the fact that for once, he had no grand plan to escape out of this troublesome situation. Honestly, they would need some sort of miracle to pull something off at this point, and even that seems like it might not work. Didn't help that their resident miracle worker was driven off and labeled the new Madara by the masses, then the council, and then the Shinobi Alliance. That latter one was more politically and economically driven, to keep the people from villainizing the strongest alliance to ever have formed in history. Keep faith in the system and all that troublesome stuff. Yet, no system will save them when a celestial body decided to make a house call. Good, you're up. A new voice, a familiar one too, which made it all the more troublesome for the Nara. Sighing, Shikamaru countered. As troublesome as it is to be awake, sleeping now would be more so. What have you found, Ino? He hadn't moved, he lacked the drawl, and quite frankly, he was clasping for straws of any information they could find for a solution. Dropping down beside him, Ino explained with hands on several files. A little bit, yes. Finally glancing to her, Shikamaru paid full attention and so she continued. Most of the intelligence guys are focusing on the Uzumaki clan's connection to the Shinigami. Combing over rumored techniques and the like. Even if partial, using any of them would likely result in death. Shikamaru theorized and she nodded. Ino added. There is a debate over whether using the Reaper Death Seal to summon the Death God is viable, and who to sacrifice to do so. The Nara grimaced, and she nodded before she added. Yeah, that's the level of desperation we are facing. What else? Well, Ino began with a grin, tapping the files in hand as she explained. I went a slightly different route. It took me some time, but I found some old records from after our three clans were admitted into the village. When we were first given our lands. Shikamaru nodded, so she pressed. I don't know why or when, but this map was removed from the general public. The file opened and it wasn't so much a map but a photo of a map on a table, and the Nara noticed something unusual on the outskirts of the village. A plot of land that he swore was empty had actually been assigned to a clan. His black piercing eyes slipped up to her cornflower blues. Shikamaru asked. The Uzumaki clan had land here? Apparently. Ino confirmed with a nod, then added. However, all records of such are gone. Even my own clan's library has no reference to the Uzumaki clan at all. This was the only thing that I found, and it was in the Hokage Tower records room. Suspicious. Shikamaru murmured, and his friend nodded in agreement. After a moment, he added. Grab Choji. We need to investigate this place quickly. Nodding, Ino closed the file and got up from her knees, holding this clue to her chest when she asked. Think it's that miracle you've been hoping for? Finally lighting his smoke, Shikamaru takes a pull before slowly exhaling it. It may be the key to all our problems. It's worth the risk. Earth. Japan, Kyoto Prefecture. Neutral shrine sniffling, Kuno stammered. But, you are not proper now. Chuckling, Naruto patted her head as he replied. Kuno, this is what I am supposed to look like. That did not stop the young kitsune from tearing up as she looked over the human form of Mr. Sage. Gone were the fox ears, the distinctive blonde 9 tails, and eyes like hers but blue. He was human now. Naruto had done this as his chakra reserves were now getting to the point where he could potentially overcharge his chakra if he remained in fox form much longer. Sure, he could have just maintained it until the battle, start at like 120% capacity of chakra, but that creates a whole host of other issues. Like subconsciously locking that form as his default form, without the tailed beasts within him to manage it. Log knows how his shapeshifting would behave and thus his return to normal form. Better safe than sorry. Kuno's sniffling obviously drew attention to her and the sage, the Yukai immediately noticing the lack of the fourth Kyuubi Kitsune, Naruto's traits gone and signature reading human to them again. The reaction all around was mixed. The two gathering exorcist squads were grateful. They have a powerful fellow again, a possible teacher, and someone to aspire to be. Zenobia and Jordan both shared a look, nodding, then got back to sharpening their weapons. Yasaka, and subsequently Hitomi and Sei, were silently disappointed, as with the many kitsune around. They were very much on Kuno's wavelength, but would not voice it openly. The Bijuu and sages all noticed, but equally said nothing. Ravel, Graphia, Rias, and her peerage were put at ease. This shift signaled, even if subconsciously, the reduction of the threat level and the standing down of combat posture. They breathed easier. Artemis and her hunters would never question the avatar of nature, especially not after the devastation he had wrought upon the devils. That being said, if you had to ask them, they do actually prefer, not that they would voice it, the nature spirit forms over this human one. Again, they mean absolutely no disrespect and will acknowledge his choice. Indra didn't care, neither did Shiva. However, Sarasvati did take notice of it while focusing on her sensory abilities and took notice of the changes in his physiology, spiritual essence, and chakra shift. Her own metaphysical thesis on Naruto, specifically, had just grown. Michael was curious about the level of the transformation and its depth. From what he was sensing, it was truly a remarkable ability, and even his life essence had shifted to that of a human from the kitsune. His conclusion: one must truly understand life to assume its various forms. The Shinto took note of it, but nothing more than that. Azazel was focusing on his sensing capabilities, feeling the changes and the depth of them all. He was genuinely impressed and equally intrigued with the metaphysical aspect of it, which had given him numerous new ideas. As of the Bijuu, none of them even battered an eye, though as Naruto was sitting back on his heels, eyes closed, and facing Kuno, Saiken approached quietly and ended up leaning onto his back, hugging him from behind, with part of her hair flowing over his shoulder. He didn't even react to her presence, adjusting his posture as she draped over him, nor the warmth of her cheek nearing his, and it looked rather intimate. The other Bijuu, and Diedrich, noticed that Saiken was channeling chakra subtly into and out of Naruto, checking on his entire physiological and biological systems. Haku had to stop herself from going over and tearing all 6 tails out of the hussy, but upon sensing this transfer of chakra, she held her tongue. As Naruto ruffled Kuno's hair, he asked, "How about later, I show you a really cool wind move?" Perking up instantly, tears forgotten, Kuno pressed, "Really? Really?" Naruto confirmed with a smirk, feeling Saiken's soft chuckle on his back and her arms around his chest tightening slightly. "Like, will I be able to do those crazy flips and stuff?" Kuno inquired quickly, causing the sage to chuckle with a shake of his head. Naruto countered, "That is really high-level stuff. You need to practice a lot before you can do that." Furrowing her brows, rather cutely, Kuno then inquired, Then, a massive breath that blows over trees and..." "I doubt your mother would approve." Naruto cut in deadpan, hearing the snicker from his passenger, and no doubt the nod of approval from said vixen beyond his sight. Before the young girl could ask again, he took a breath in and caused her to stop. Then softly, he breathed out a focused, narrow stream of wind that blew past her and rustled the trees a good 5 meters away. Snapping back to him after it ended, Kuno asked, "That was cool, but..." Naruto raised a hand and she went mute immediately. Placing his hand in a tiger seal, he repeated the breath in but pitched his head up slightly and then breathed out. The same stream of wind was instead replaced by a focused, narrow stream of vividly orange flames an equal 5 meters away. "You're such a show-off," Saiken whispered breathlessly into his ear, causing him to smirk while dropping the tiger hand sign, just before Kuno snapped back to him in awe. Naruto explained, "That was the same technique, just with an added flame." Kuno nodded enthusiastically. The other kitsune tuned in as the sage explained, "From what I know, kitsune flame is vast and incredibly potent. But because it is, there are plenty of times it may not be as useful to use. By focusing it, they become a precision tool that can be used in any number of situations. Kuno nodded rapidly, so he finished. As you have the wind nature to your chakra, this goes doubly for you as you can mold the wind to direct your fire to increase potency, direction, and focus. Raising her hand as if in class, Kuno asked, "Then I can do that too?" "Eventually." Naruto confirms, and she lit up like a second sunrise. He amended smoothly, "With proper training and diligence in discipline. Wind and fire are very different elements and must be treated with care." Nodding, Kuno announced, "Wind boosts fire, does it?" Naruto asked, brow arched as he slowly folds his arms with a grin. The young girl paused in thought, recalculating if she had misspoken and completely unaware of the others listening in intently. After a few moments, Kuno nodded carefully and clearly unsure, causing his smirk to increase before he revealed. "Wind can boost fire, that is true, however, it can also." He lifts a finger, a small orange flame igniting on the digit, before he breathed out a short sharp breath and the flame instantly went out. Naruto explained. "Put it out. A careful balance must be maintained at all times. Nature is complex and not so one-dimensional. As a sage, we are far more aware of this than even nature spirits such as you yokai. We have to be, or we wouldn't be sages." Kuno got thoughtful again, gaze somewhat distant, and the audience were whispering to one another about the impromptu lesson. The concept was rather simple, but it was that simplicity that many seemed to have overlooked. Underworld. Lilith in the new Devil Council room. Sears looks up from the paperwork he was drafting to find his mother walking into the room with a letter in hand. The other council members were sitting around the same table, going through every single law passed with relevance to reincarnated devils. When Venelana reached her son, she handed him the envelope and offered, "A request from my Rias." This drew the attention of the nearby Ajuka, who raised his brow, and Falbium, who just glanced over. Sears took the envelope, opened it and retrieved the letter to read. After a few moments, rereading it twice, he nodded before he spoke lowly. "She's right. This is a prime opportunity." Venelana nodded but listened as her son continued. "However, she is also not in a position to be going on such an excursion. Assuming this is accurate, entering a different world altogether is something that can have any number of adverse effects on one's body." "When you say, different world, does that mean?" Ajuka began but was cut off by Sears as he reported. "Yes, a different world. It seems that Narian is actually, according to my sister, a prophesied hero who was betrayed by the world he was supposed to save, and that he is going back to save some people to bring back here." The whole room fell silent at that, the disbelief evident. Ajuka broke it. "How credible is this information?" Graphia confirmed that this came from the Shinigami himself. Venelana revealed, and that shut down any naysayers pretty quickly. The Shinto death god is not one for jokes and rarely gets involved with mortal affairs, thus his credibility is unmatched. Not to mention, Sears continued, drawing attention back on himself as he leans back in his throne-like chair. House Phoenix is apparently sending relief supplies for the growing refugee camp, currently being set up around the Six-Path Pact meeting site. Refugee camp. Nodding, Sears explained. "It seems the members of the pact are all contributing to aiding Narian in this mission given to him by the Shinigami. Apparently, the United Yukai faction have even gone so far as to pledge ground forces for this evacuation." "Ground forces? How do they plan on, in approximately," Sears began, then glanced to the clock. 3 hours and 27 minutes, the Shinigami itself will be opening a portal between this world and the world of the sage's origin, to which they will have a bridge to recover his forces. That isn't a lot of time. I would love to get a hold of that kind of technique, Ajuka murmured, though Falbium added smoothly. I have no doubt this won't be replicable by anyone, seeing as the Shinigami itself is involved, so forget it. Sears let out a sigh, rubbing his brow with a hand as he spotted several counselors whispering to one another and decided to cut this off, now, and no. All eyes snapped to him as he glanced up at those whispering and finished. Those refugees are off limits to everyone. Eyes snapped around to several groups of counselors, who denied any such plans. We would never. This is not the time for such rash decisions. I too do not feel any action against them was wise. Silence. Sirzex ordered and they did so. With the next breath, he added, I am also forbidding familiars from Japan in its entirety. Am I clear? Several shared looks were halted by the Red Satan's flaring of demonic power as he reiterated, clear and articulate. Am I clear? Yes, sir, good. Sirzex responded, lowering his demonic power smoothly before discreetly sighing. He then stated, the last thing we need is to draw the sage's attention. We will offer aid via third parties and official channels only. No backroom deals. No lording this over them. Just goods and medicines. I'll get the logistics corps moving. Falbium reported, already calling up his lieutenants. Ajuka then added, I'll be sure to get some people to triple-check all supplies are clean, so no funny business. Nodding, Sirzex replied, good idea. Make notes of everything and their origins. I want clean paper trails and no fuss. What should I tell Rias? Venelana asked, still standing beside her son. She is rather adamant about going. It is a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity after all, visiting another world. That's true. Ajuka murmured, then added, kinda jealous. My answer is still no, Sirzex stated firmly, looking to his mother. She nodded, in total agreement, then he offered. Tell her that we are sorry, but in her condition, she is not in a position to travel between worlds. It is best if she stays put, and coordinates the refugee camp to make a better impression on the other pact members for us. Japan, Kyoto Prefecture. Neutral shrine outside the Shinto-esque building, guarded by a bare cedar torii gate decorated with shimenawa. The gathering of factions had shifted immensely in such a short time frame. Gone were the tables and chairs of a high-class gathering, in its place tents of the temporary nature and semi-permanent structures being set up by the yokai. Both kinds of angels had been showing up with semi-regularity, tensions non-existent as most saw the massive crater that was once a new devil base that was repurposed by the sages and none wanted to provoke them further. Supplies were being transferred in from Kyoto, Kanto, and even the underworld, both Gregory labeled a new devil faction. The local vicinity had been expanded outward by magic and senjutsu, showing off that the Bijuu also have access to nature energy while similarly immune to the negative consequences. Kurama actually snorted at the rage of nature in its attempt to influence him. It was cute. Saiken had ordered Naruto to take a nap, thus he was currently beneath a tree getting some shut-eye with Kuno on his lap, Haku at his side, Kuroka and Matabi curled up beside his leg, and the world moving around him. Diedrich was keeping an eye on the supplies, though Kateria inspecting them with a fine-tooth comb to ensure nothing unbecoming gets through. She was given this task by Naruto himself because, according to him, she seems like a hard-ass and stickler for rules. She did not deny it. Shomei was watching over the Phoenix House members and their supplies, all the while Ravel was coordinating the setting up of medical tents. This was her show and she was orchestrating it surprisingly well, but was also hyper-conscious of Gabriel and Saiken who kept popping in to check things. Sariel was drilling Zenovia and Jordan with their squads for some last-minute training. They aren't part of the frontal line, but defending themselves is likely a must. Artemis and her hunters were with Gyuki and Kurama, reviewing the remembered map of Konohagakure the Kyuubi drew out with surprising accuracy and detail. Indra, Shiva, Azazel, and Michael were all observing the map too as plans were drawn. Several members of the new United Yokai Council have also arrived and a few even brought offerings, in the form of security teams. Yasaka and Nurarihyun were sorting through who would get the honor of aiding the sage in this excursion and keeping it balanced. As for Rias Gremory and her peerage, Issei and Kiba were with Son Goku, who had built another temporary workshop and double-checking gear, thus the two young reincarnated devils were hanging around too. Kaneko was observing the snoozing pile of yokai and sage. Her arrow cat sister is not being so arrow recently, but also super attached to Menma, Narian. He is a sage teaching her how to use senjutsu better. The good senjutsu. She was excluded as she is a devil now, but so was her sister. Asia had been following around Saiken for a time before the Bijuu dumped her onto Gabriel and Ravel, irritated that people think she's a medic. She isn't. She's just a professional. Keep Naruto moving. Gastropoda with 6 tails. Get off her back. Akano hadn't left her king's side, though her eyes did shift to Narian's snoozing form on occasion as she was still coming to terms with a few things she has since heard about him. A genuine hero, betrayed by those he saved, and still he has no hatred toward them. What does that say about herself? Then there was Rias. She was not pouting nor vibrating in her seat at the chance to isekai for real and being denied because she happens to be in a wheelchair. Maybe she could get an exception on the deal, or maybe another deal to temporarily regain her legs. She can't miss this. You seem restless, Rias. A voice drew the redhead's attention to the side where suddenly her fellow young woman, but with pale greenish blonde hair, and long slit pink eyes behind glasses, stood rather detached from everything. Blinking, Rias responded. Ah, Sikvaria, I thought you were at the mountain shrine still. Nodding once, Sikvaria responded. I was, but news travels fast and my parents wanted my participation in this event secured. Thus, my presence here. Pouting tightly, Rias remarked softly. You already got praised by Narian and the Yukai. Is that not enough? One should always strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. Sikvaria commented, then finally looked to her friend and fellow heiress. Regardless of what the underworld currently thinks of her, Rias is still an heiress to the Agaras. Rias nodded slowly, before she asked. So, what are you planning on doing to help? Olivian and I shall be coordinating our forward efforts and planning contingencies. So just your queen? Why not your knight too? Rias posed, but Sikvaria shook her head and responded. Not necessary for this. We are not the fighting troop. Attempting to force it will only cause things to go awry. Therefore, Bafil is unrequired. Rias nodded to that. It was understandable. Sikvaria looked around the clearing at the cooperative effort in play at current. Under normal circumstances and conditions, none of the factions here would be caught dead assisting one another. Yet, in the presence of the sages, they do so seamlessly. Perhaps a sign of a future to come. Adjusting her glasses, she spoke aloud. I am more than a little curious as to the outcome of this all. You mean rescuing people in another world? Among other things, yes. Sikvaria confirmed with a nod, then glanced to the sage who managed this. He was resting beneath a tree, surrounded by children and criminals alike, yet completely at ease, evident as he was choosing sleep among many powerful people present. You think he's incredible too, right? Rias asked, causing the pink-eyed gaze to fall to her with a questioning look. The Gremory hadn't returned it, but remained on the sage Narian and added. Narian. As powerful as he is, not once has he sought domination of others. Then just as easily, others gather around him, especially the children. Finally breaking her gaze from the blonde and back to her fellow heiress standing beside her, Rias finished. It's kind of amazing. After several seconds to ponder that, Sikvaria offered back. It is unusual, yes. However, what about you? Do you not hate him? He did take your legs from you, did he not? Thinking on that a few moments herself, Rias weighed the options for a bit. Sure, she is definitely not pleased with things and was heartbroken about the news that she will have an even harder time having children, compared to the regular Devilis, but at the same time she was also freed from her own fate to marry that thing. It is also very, very clear that Narian could have ended them at any moment during their fight at the initial meeting. Instead, he disabled and at most disarmed, sorry Sona, them then left once he ejected her rook piece. Since then, I don't hate him. Rias confirmed softly, surprising herself, Sikvaria, and maybe Grafia nearby. She continued gently. He has challenged my point of view on things and I'm still trying to make sense of things. Losing my legs was a hard blow, but it won't stop me from what I set my sights on. Looking up at her friend, Rias finished firmly, if anything, it's made me want to strive harder. Not too far away, Matabi's ear flicked in her sleep. You've grown, Rias. Seekvaria spoke softly, retuning her gaze to the cooperating forces before them again. Magashi, in her typical young cat form with 7 tails, strolled into the new command tent put up by the newish United Yukai Alliance, where Yasaka, Nurarihyun, and Amaterasu were. Just as she arrived, Benemune stepped out as she stated, I shall inform Azazel-sama. Thank you, Lady Benemune. Yasaka responded distractedly, looking down at the map table of the plans for the new temporary village being set up at present. I can help with the fields, if you allow me, Demeter informed calmly, masking her annoyance well but not enough to fool anyone present. Amaterasu responded calmly, not looking to the goddess. As I have already explained, Lady Inari is more than capable of handling such an assignment. She is very insistent on it in fact. Hopping up on the table, Magashi finally spoke. Is something wrong? Not at all. Nurarihyun reported, sipping his tea calmly too. It was a good blend. Then after a moment he added, there are some justifiable concerns regarding the nature of these humans, and their ability to wield chakra. Which is different from ours fundamentally. Yasaka clarified, looking to the man then the cat form Nekomata. She then gestured to the side where her fellow kitsune stood, the 8-tailed Sei, and the leader of Kyoto informed. We have witnessed it firsthand. My friend has felt it directly. It is chakra, but not like ours. Then what is the problem? Magashi questioned, head tilted slightly. It isn't like this is an invading army. They are refugees fleeing the end of their world. People who are loyal to Narian first and foremost. Besides, she has several plans already. Do we count them among our fellows, or as humans? Nurarihyun explained simply, and a soft silence fell upon the tent. Yasaka broke it after a sigh. I have already proposed a solution. They are, like some of our own already are, human-like yukai. That is how we of Kyoto shall see them. Scoffing, Nurarihyun snipped. Your pandering to Lord Narian is well documented, Vixen. The Kyubi raised a single, noble-clipped, blonde eyebrow at the accusation. Nurarihyun added bluntly. The fact that, even now, your kid is spending time with him is rather telling of your intentions. What my daughter chooses to do is of none of your concern. Yasaka spoke lowly, dangerously. Her tail swayed once, before she added. And making the sage feel comfortable is to be expected of all yukai. They're the pinnacle of senjutsu mastery. Do you not agree, Lady Magashi? Looking to the white and black calico, who continued to lick her paw for a moment. Once done, Magashi glanced up to Nurarihyun. She is right. They're even above my level of mastery, I fear. But. Her gaze shifts to the Kyubi of Kyoto, a knowing glint in her eyes. I also understand Nurarihyun's concerns. You are known to be very protective of your daughter. Your intention is rather obvious, young Kyubi. My daughter is no tool. Yasaka stated firmly, almost growling at the insinuation she was trying to leverage her only daughter so egregiously. Grinning like she caught the canary, Magashi offered calmly as her tails tucked in around her. Be thankful that I am not 100 years younger, or I would not delegate my clan's contribution to Narian's goals to my last daughter. Yasaka's eyes narrowed. Contribution? You would go so far, Magashi? Nurarihyun inquired, surprised at the action and the fact she was handing her last daughter to the sage. Then again, it would make sense politically speaking. Regarding her fellow Eastern Yukai faction leader, Magashi offered easily. He already has a Bakaneko and a Nekosho. With Yuma, he then has a Nekomata to cover my kind completely. It was not a hard decision to make. A strange stillness at that statement was broken by a cough from Sei, that sounded suspiciously similar to a, she's serious, than anyone would point out to. Demeter looked blankly at the fact that this cat assumes any modicum of control over her future champion, not calling attention to the fact that it may be true. Amaterasu just sipped her tea, knowing this posturing to be pointless. The one they know as Narian, she knew as Naruto, was not one to be swayed by political pressure or conditional bonds. If anything, Yasaka is probably the most ahead in any meaningful way. Or should she say Kuno is ahead? The goddess of the Shinto Trinity wouldn't be surprised if anyone attempting to do the child harm would suddenly, and very violently, be removed from the realm of existence in totality. No questions asked. After a deep breath, Yasaka remained calm as she responded. That is indeed a wise decision. Be sure to take care upon that pathway for your sake. Something about that statement killed the amusement Magari was riding, and even her tail slowed carefully. She grew contemplative, considering the actions thus far and whether or not she had moved, somewhat, maybe, prematurely. After all, the Kitsune have known Sage Narian the longest, and the Kyuubi of Kyoto concedes to no one. Naruto's mindscape, just because his body was sleeping, didn't mean his mind was. Within the grassy forest clearing where the 10 beasts of chakra and might normally gather, Naruto stood calmly while facing the 2 very new visitors with his clan compound at his back. Honestly, he never anticipated this, but then again, unexpected seems to be his middle name as of late. Jumping onto his back, the human form of Matabi wrapped her arms around his neck while staring at the other 2 and explained. So, young ones, welcome to our home. Kuroka just nodded, having seen glimpses of this place from the memories she inadvertently saw when her bishop pieces were removed. Though, admittedly, this place felt a lot calmer and freeing than she anticipated. Kuno was just staring at the wide open place, not really getting it all that much, but was just looking to play a bit more. Though, the red brick walls and that weird spiral shape caught her attention after a while, so when she pointed to it, she asked, Mr. Sage, what's that? Following the gesture, Naruto looked back at the compound at his back, then back to the girl and explained. That is the mental representation of my clan's combined, collective knowledge that dates back 7 centuries or so. Matabi purred into his ear softly, leaning in harder on his back and pressing her body into his. Kuroka's brows shot up. That wasn't here last time when she saw the memories. Kuno gaped. Chuckling lightly, Naruto smiled nervously. Yeah, well, I am the last of my clan, so this is to be expected, I guess. Matabi's eyes narrowed to lines and slits, seeing Kuroka perk up at that bit of news, then eyes slid to met hers. If their eyes could shoot lightning, they would have fried each other. Naruto is just glad they don't know that particular jutsu. Clearing his throat, he added, besides, that's not why you are here, is it? Looking at Kuroka as he knows that Kuno had no idea how she got here, Kuroka probably mimicked whatever she sensed Matabi do and dragged herself and Kuno into his mindscape. Nervously, the black cat explained. Well, I was just curious and trying to figure out what Matabi was doing when she curled up with you. I had no idea chakra modulation could do this. Matabi stuck her nose into the air from Naruto's back, imperialistically superior to this lowly Nekosho, who hated she can't wipe that smug look from her face as it was true, for now. Just for now, not forever. Nodding in understanding, Naruto offered calmly. Well, that's to be expected. Matabi here is about. He paused upon feeling the human form Bijuu groan so lowly, even with her by his ear. His canine-grade hearing did not pick it up. The most subtle threat he had ever encountered. Clearing his throat, Naruto began. Just next time, don't copy things you don't fully understand. Luckily, this time, the only thing that happened was you dragging Kuno in with you. Next time, it may be much, much worse. Kuroka nodded with a tight expression. She didn't like not being strong enough to compete with that flaming pile of fur, but long-term. She has to think long-term. For her future kittens. Choosing to ignore those thoughts, he picked up Naruto, then looked to Kuno and smiled wide. Say, Kuno-chan, why don't we continue that lesson from earlier? With the wind stuff. Perking, then jolting up, Kuno cheered. Yes, more wind stuff. Naruto chuckled. Matabi purred a little, when Kuroka quirked a brow and asked, "Nya, this is all in the mental representation of your mind. Will that even benefit her?" Smirking knowingly, the blonde shrugged. Who knows? The Nekosho narrowed her eyes on him, suspecting that it did indeed benefit them and he was just playing around and goofing off. He can be such a... Kuroka face palmed, recalling exactly what he was and the fact that he was acting like one should not have been a surprise. Snorting haughtily, Matabi grinned. "Took you long enough, little kitten." Glaring with all her might, Kuroka hissed, "Shut it, elder." Matabi's eyes glowed menacingly at the cheek of this child, finally climbing off her Naruto's back and flexing her claws. "Oh, this is on. I'm going to gut you over and over again." Snorting, Kuroka retorted while extending her own claws. "Huh, are you sure you won't throw your back out, Nya? Perhaps your claws are as dull as your brain." Naruto took Kuno by the hand and led her away from the no doubt very quickly escalating catfight as he explained. "See, the wind is neither sharp or blunt, but what we shape it to become. Elemental nations. Land of fire. Konohagakure no Sato." As the vestiges of dawn lit up the distant horizon and off the chaotic layer of vapor known as clouds, a single kunoichi was running at her full speed toward the cage tower. She can't believe she missed it this long. Subtle, strange, and somehow coordinated movements from both within and beyond the walls that she can no longer brush off as coincidental. Pushing up her glasses as she hops over another street, Karen's gaze shifted beyond the walls and knew for a fact that this was it. From the intelligence that they have gathered, the future peaks they have seen from the priestess, from her own research and now what her sensory ability is telling her. The battle for the world is now on their doorstep. Landing outside the cage tower, no one dared block the special Jonin Uzumaki as she sprinted inside and up the stairs, people diving out of the way to ensure they don't block her. She is the Alliance right hand and none wanted to be the one responsible for delaying her. Not even knocking, Karen burst into the cage office to find the 6th Hokage standing at the panoramic window in view of the village hidden in the leaves with his hands clasped behind his back, his silver hair as gravity-defying as always and posture calm. Kakashi posed the question almost casually. "I take it you have something important to say, Karen-san?" Stopping by the desk, Karen nodded, adjusted her glasses and then informed, "It's time." Sighing hard, Kakashi took a moment before turning around and nodding, then he asked, "What are we facing and how long do we have, exactly?" Before Karen could explain, someone else did. No time at all. Both Kakashi and Karen tensed, but the next moment a kunai appeared at Karen's neck, cold steel and razor sharp, causing the girl to go absolutely rigid. Kakashi traced the arm, but before he knew it a very familiar red head stepped into view from behind his subordinate and his breath caught, evacuated and died in his lungs at the same time, skin paling significantly and even his hair seemed to wilt at the face staring back at him with a smile so deathly, it redefined everything. A fair-skinned, slender woman, with cold violet eyes in a round face and vibrant red hair framing it while a portion was up in a ponytail. She was gripping the kunai at Karen's neck, while waving with her free right hand. "Kakashi, been too long." Sweating profusely and panicking something fierce, Kakashi stammered quietly, Kushina." Smiling wider, Kushina nodded then near enough chirped, "Glad you remember the woman who near enough raised you alongside my husband." Karen paled to a ghostly white at the confirmation of this woman's identity. She knows her. Or rather, of her. Her files were heavily classified until recently due to her connection to Naruto. Her son. Worst of all, she's back from the dead and, to any Uzumaki worth their blood. She swallowed, hard, that caused the kunai at her throat to nick it and draw a thin line of blood. This caused Kushina to glance to her briefly, then back to the so-called Hokage. "So, I know I've been away for a while and everything, but I'm back. Care to tell me exactly how my very precious Sochi was treated, and what you did to help him, Kakashi?" She dragged out his name enough to show how much she knew he had failed not only her son, but her husband too. Not that it matters anymore. His failures have led to the end of this world and with it, his chances to fail again. This it for today guys, this was the part 15 of What If Naruto Was the Jinchuuriki of 9 Bijuu X High School DxD. Stay tuned for more.